Hi everyone, I'm Shaylin here with Reedsy. So today we're going to be talking about the qualities of good writing. A lot of us strive to become better writers or to become good writers, but that can be a difficult thing to work towards if we don't actually know what good writing is. Now, ultimately, this is pretty subjective, and I think it's important for every writer to define what good writing means for them. Rather than good writing being this thing that is set in stone that always has the exact same qualities, think about what good writing is for you. Ultimately, that is the most important thing. So there's no such thing as a blanket taste in books or writing, and therefore your idea of good writing doesn't have to be the same as someone else's. You can have your own specific qualities that you strive for in your work and that you want to improve and perfect. Now, despite that being said, in this video, I'm going to run through 7 qualities of strong writing. I think these are the general qualities that make up both strong prose and strong storytelling. Different writers may have different values, very specific things that they value in their work, but I think this is a really good starting point if you're trying to identify strong or weak points in your writing. So the first quality of strong writing that I wanted to note and talk about is that it's intentional. This is a word you'll hear thrown out a lot. Is it intentional? Are you being intentional? You can break this rule as long as you're doing it intentionally. It's a word that we use a lot when we talk about writing. So what does that actually mean and why is it so important? In writing, intentionality pretty much means that you know what it is you want to accomplish and you're making choices in order to accomplish that thing. Now, I do think it's important to note, it can take time and many drafts to uncover your intentions, and that's okay. You don't have to know why you selected every single word or why you structured a sentence this way on the first draft. You may have things that you're doing very intentionally on the first draft, whereas other aspects might just be intuitive, and that's okay. A lot of the time, our intuitive choices end up actually being, in some ways, the most intentional ones. So don't take this point to mean that you can't follow your gut when writing. In fact, that's often a good thing. A lot of the time you'll find that the choices you make intuitively contribute to your goals for the piece anyways. But being intentional with your writing means that in the end, when you look at all the little pieces of your story, from the word choice up to the bigger choices in things like point of view, form, or plot development, these things are all contributing to your goals for the piece. The next quality of strong writing is that it is economical. Striving for better economy in your work is a great way to challenge yourself to make your work more efficient and more effective. This essentially means that you're using the fewest words possible to convey your point. This doesn't mean that you can't write a long book. It just means that you're telling your work in the fewest words needed, even if that requires hundreds of thousands of words across several books. Some stories are really long and very complicated and require way more words to tell the story. But in those cases, it's even more important that you're really paying attention to the economy, so the length of the story is really earned. This also doesn't mean that your style has to be extremely sparse and spare. It can be if that's your style, but maybe your style is a little more elaborate and focused on description. That's still okay as long as you're using those words intentionally to enhance the story. Focusing on improving the economy of your work means learning to cut extraneous words or extraneous scenes or extraneous details, things that don't need to be there and don't contribute. When you learn how to cut those things, the aspects of your story that are strong and engaging will pop even more on the page. The next quality of strong writing is that it is clear. And I might even say that I think this could be the most important one on the list. Clarity means that you are communicating to the reader what you want to communicate. If your work isn't clear, the reader won't understand what it is you're going for, and they may interpret things in a very different way than you intended. Now, of course, every reader is going to bring in their own assumptions and their own biases and their own unique reading to a piece. That's inherent. But a reader's added interpretation of a piece should be built around a foundation of clarity that means that you're still conveying what you wanted to convey. Clarity is one of the most important qualities of good writing because if it isn't there, the reader isn't going to understand your story. They're not going to read the story you were trying to tell. They're either going to be confused or they're going to read a very different story than the one you were trying to communicate. Clarity is also probably one of the most common problems that writers will face in their work, and it's a very difficult thing to iron out because it's hard to spot clarity issues in your own story. So many writers prioritize complexity or ambiguity or, artsiness, and that's what leads to a lot of clarity issues. But learning to prioritize clarity, first of all, you can still have all those things. You can still have complexity, ambiguity, and artsiness alongside clarity, but you can't really have them without it. The next quality of strong writing is that it is consistent. This means that the choices you make for the piece are consistent throughout. It's told in a consistent tone. It's told in a consistent style. The themes and ideas you're trying to express are consistent with the other choices you're making in the story. This is important because without consistency, the work will feel very non-cohesive. Which leads to our next point, which is cohesiveness. Cohesiveness means that all of these different choices work together for a common goal. Is there a cohesive use of style, form, story, theme, and character in order to tell the story you want to tell? If one aspect of a story doesn't feel cohesive with the ultimate goal of the story, it can feel quite jarring. This also ties back to intentionality. If you're really intentional with how you're constructing the different aspects of your story, how you're fitting the pieces together, that will really help create a more cohesive work overall. The next important quality of good writing may be the hardest to pin down, and it's that it's insightful. In fact, it's so hard to pin down that I was a little reluctant to put it on this list, but I decided to include it because I think it's actually a really important quality of strong writing. Insightfulness essentially means that the writing feels fresh and wise. It doesn't mean that every single sentence has to be an original and unprecedented philosophical insight, but it does mean two things overall. First of all, that there's an originality to the voice and to the story that feels like there's something new here being said, and as well that we can trust the story to say something. Does that thing have to be completely unprecedented? No, but we do want to feel convinced by the story and its intelligence. So insightfulness means that you have insight to these characters, to this story, and to the world, and that this is going to bring something fresh and exciting to the reader. And the final quality of strong writing is that it is interesting. Interesting essentially means that the reader is going to want to keep on reading. It holds their attention. It's alluring. It's asking compelling questions. Your writing can be interesting on the line level if you're phrasing things in compelling ways that make the reader want to read on, where they feel engaged by the story on a linguistic or a sensory level. But it's also really important on the story level that you're crafting interesting people and putting them in an interesting situation in an interesting world. I think along with clarity, this is the other most important point on the list, because if your writing isn't interesting, then it's boring and no one is going to want to read on. It's really important, maybe more than anything else, that your story and your writing is interesting, because without that, it's very hard to captivate a reader and get them on board with the story that you want to tell. So those are what I think are kind of the 7 core qualities of strong writing. These are definitely up for debate, and like I said at the beginning, different writers will have different things that they value in their work. So this is very subjective, very personal, and it really is important as a writer to know what you value in your work. This list is probably pretty biased by what I value in my work. I tried to keep it fairly universal and not get into really specific things that I really value in my own work as a writer, but every writer is going to kind of have their own list of things that's really important to them, that they want to strive for and want to improve at. But if you're not really sure how to identify good writing or what good writing looks like, or if you're maybe veering towards improvement, I think these are all things that you can look for in your work and strive to improve. So I would love to hear what the most important quality in your work is for you. When you think, what is good writing? What is the word that pops into your mind? So thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos from us. We've got new writing, editing, and publishing tips every Friday on this channel. Until next time, bye.